When I first got into storytelling, you know how storytellers are. Your whole life changes. And I needed all of these things for storytelling. And every Christmas, from the first year I got into storytelling, my daughters would call me and say, okay, what do you want for Christmas this year? And I would give them my list. So my second year after starting storytelling, they called me and asked for my list. And instead of telling them, well, I saw this top I really like, or can you get me that bracelet or this watch? I said, well, I need a paper cutter. I need a drill. I said, a gift card to Home Depot would really be nice. I could use a saw. They said, what? And then I said, well, don't you need just regular things? It's like, well, I do, but I really want these things. These are things I really need. Okay. So they got together after they talked to me, and I usually got one of those things, and then they went on and bought me whatever else they wanted me to have. So this went on for several years, and I never did get my drill. So I said, they said, what do you want for Christmas? I said, number 1, a drill. Number 2, a drill. And number 3, a drill. They said, okay, Mom, we got it. We'll get you a drill. And so I got my drill. But that's when I discovered I really needed a saw. I really needed a saw. So the next year it's like, please give us something that you want for Christmas that's not a tool. I said, but I need a saw. I really need a saw. Please? So we'll see. So I gave each one of them the same list pretty much, and the saw was number 1 and 2 on the list. So I kind of figured it out, and I knew that my youngest daughter and her husband were going to be the ones to give me the saw. And then they had decided my oldest daughter would give me the other gift. So it's like, that's okay. So I wanted a saw, a little jigsaw, okay? Little box about, you know. So they came in Christmas, and they had their bags with the Christmas gifts in it. And then my son-in-law came in with this big box. And I'm thinking, oh, that must be my oldest daughter's gift, because all I wanted was a little jigsaw. So we put the gifts around the tree. We ate dinner, and then it was time to open the presents. They started handing out presents, and I'm sitting there watching them because I knew that big box was for my daughter, and I wanted to know what were they giving my daughter. So the big box kept sitting there, and finally, he picked up the big box and he headed around the table, and I knew he was going to head to her, but instead he came to me and set it down on the table. I'm thinking like, uh-oh, what is this? I wanted a drill. This is not a drill. What did they get me? I didn't ask for anything this big. Well, I guess they got me something else I really don't want. So I tried to move the box to the center of the table so that I could open it. I couldn't move it. It was so heavy. So I took the scissors and I opened the box. When I took the top off and I saw saw, and it was a big saw, 10-inch blade, Craftsman's from Sears, in a big box like this. I opened it up and I smiled and I said, thank you. And I reached in. It was so big it had 2 places for you to hold on to lift it. I reached in, I put my hand on each one of the grip parts, and I said, thank you, I really like my saw, but I don't think I can get it out of the box. And in my mind, I'm seeing me trying. All I wanted was a little jigsaw that I could take to put on the end of the table and cut a dowel rod like this. And I could see me just, that big jigsaw, putting it on the table and going, and going across the table with it. On top of that, my table would be cut in half. So I thought, I looked at it, I said, I really appreciate this, but all I wanted was a saw. Well, we got you a saw. It's like, no, a little bitty saw, just a little tiny saw. And they said, oh, you wanted a jigsaw. I said, I don't know what you call it. I just wanted a little saw. So anyway, I thought about that when he was telling me that. I had to end up taking it back, of course. Well, he took it back because I couldn't carry it. So And they gave me the money. I went to Sears. I got me a little jigsaw. I got all the attachments to go with it. And I had about $25 or $30 left over. And I bought me something. But anyway, and guess what? Please don't, if you see my children, don't tell them, I never used the saw. Now I'm thinking about selling it, so please don't tell them if you see them that I didn't use it and I want to sell it. So anyway, I thought about that when he was up here being Santa Claus. But tonight I want to share a story with you about my grandmother. She was 4 feet 10 inches tall. And in her own words, she used to say, I never weighed more than 100 pounds, even when I was soaking wet. Now, that was my grandmother, May Tanky Bell Walker. That was her name. Now, nobody ever called her granny, grandmother. Everybody called her Aunt Tanky. Not Aunt Tanky, but A-I-N-T, Aunt Tanky. She was Aunt Tanky to everybody. Don't ask me why. I came to the conclusion it was one of those country things. So it's like, okay, Aunt Tanky. But Aunt Tanky was one of those little people. I always often used to call her a little woman. Aunt Tanky was one of those little women that if she ever told you to do something, you better do it. Because if you didn't, you never wanted that little woman to tell you, go get me a switch off of that weeping willow tree. And if she ever told you, go get me 3 switches off that weeping willow tree and they better not be small, you knew you were in big trouble. The last thing in the world you wanted her to tell you was go get a switch. And when you did it, like she said, they better not be small. She could stand there and look at us and put a fear in us like nobody I've ever seen. That little woman could put a fear in you that would make you stay straight for a long time. Well, now, Aunt Tanky used to do this to us. And I used to sometimes think, why is she so mean? Why is she so mean to us? But in later years, I realized that all of that talking about switching and what she was going to do was pretty much all talk. Because as kids, we got very few switchings. But up until the moment she stopped talking, you never knew what that little woman was going to do. You would have no idea whether she was going to give you a switching or whether you were going to get 3 licks with the belt. Well, I used to think sometimes, oh, I wish she would just go in and give me a switching and get it over with. Because if she ever decided to give you one of her tongue lashings, oh, one of her tongue lashings, if you got a good one, it would last you for a long time. She would scare us straight with a good tongue lashing. Now, remember I told you if she ever told you not to do anything, don't do it? Well, most of the kids did what she told them to. But me, I always had to question her. Every time she told us something, I always had to say, but why? And sometime I would ask her, but why? And then ask her the question, and it didn't have anything to do with what she had just said. Well, Aunt Tanky would stand there and she would look at me and she would just shake her head sometime. And then sometimes she'd tell you, just do what I told you to do, girl. I said, yes, ma'am. And I would do it. Well, the day that this incident happened, the only thing I can say is that day, the spirit of stupidity must have taken me over. Yes, the spirit of stupidity entered my life and took me over that day because what I did that day was plain old stupid. I knew better. I knew exactly what I was doing, but I did it anyway. I went right on and did what I wanted to do. You see, it was a hot summer day. And my brother, Junior, and I, we were playing in the backyard. I was making mud pies. He was doing whatever it is boys do. And Tanky had told me several times, go wash the dishes. And I kept saying, yes, ma'am, but I never did stop making my mud pies. Then she was sitting on the front porch, and then I heard her say, Loretta, didn't I tell you to go do them dishes? I could tell from that tone that was the last time she was going to ask me. So I said, Yes, ma'am. And I thought about it. So I decided to stop making my mud pies. So I slowly got up, and I slowly started walking to the house. And when I passed my brother, he started to tease me. He looked at me and said, "You got to do the dishes, you got to do the dishes." I gave him that look and I said, "You better leave me alone." He looked at me and said, "And if I don't, what you gonna do?" And then he got up. He got up and walked over to my stack of beautiful mud pies, and he stepped on them, and he squashed them, and he looked at me and he laughed. Oh, he made a big mistake. You see, we had this big wood pile in the backyard, and when I walked past that wood pile, I reached over and I picked up a piece of wood. And I turned around and I looked at him and I started crying and I started running to him yelling, "You better fix them, you better fix them, you better fix them." He turned around and saw me running after him with that coming towards him with that big piece of wood. He jumped up and started running towards the front of the house where Aunt Tanky was sitting crying. "Ain't Tanky, Loretta trying to hit me with this big piece of wood." Oh, and I was right behind him. When he turned the corner of the house where Aunt Tanky was, I was right on his tail. And when I turned the corner, I ran smack into Aunt Tanky. She was standing there looking down at me. She grabbed my wrist and took that piece of wood. I was so close to him, and she wouldn't let me hit him. I was mad. Oh, I was mad. I was standing there. "Girl, what's wrong with you?" I said, Junior stepped on my mud pies." And she held that piece of wood up. She said, "What you do with this piece of wood? I said, "He stepped on my mud pies and he squashed them all." And she said, "Didn't I tell you all not to be picking up stuff and hitting each other? Look at this piece of wood. You could have really hurt your brother." And I'm standing there, tears just rolling down my face. And she's like, "Ah, ah." She said, "Didn't I tell y'all that?" And we both said, "Yes, ma'am." We both jumped. And then she said, "Look at this piece of wood. Just look at it." And she showed me a sharp point on the piece of wood. Well, when I saw the sharp point, I kind of stopped crying a little bit. And I stood there and I was saying, and she was looking at me. She said, "That's why I tell you kids, whenever you all have a problem, come tell me. I'm the one that give out the punishments around here. Don't I tell you all that all the time?" "Yes, ma'am." And we stood there. By now, I had stopped crying because my mind was starting to tick. I was thinking, uh-oh, I'm in big trouble. And I don't think this time she's going to send me to the corner of the porch. That's where she used to send me when I did things to think about what I had done. I said, I think this is not going to be a switching offense. I think she's going to get the belt with me on this one. And the belt meant that you always got 3 licks. So I'm standing there and I'm thinking like, oh, I'm going to get the belt today. And Junior's standing over there by Aunt Tanky grinning. He was just grinning. And then Aunt Tanky looked at me and she looked at Junior. Then she told Junior, "Go in the house and get the belt for me." Oh, when she said that, I thought, I'm not getting the belt today. I'm going to be sent to the corner of the porch. You see, Aunt Tanky had this habit of always sending us to get the switch when she wanted to whip us to get our own switch. And she always had this habit of sending you to get the belt if she was going to give you a belt, 3 strikes with the belt. She had sent Junior for the belt, and I knew that he was going to get it that day and not me. So I was smiling. I stood there, that little smile stayed on my face. And I was thinking, I'm just going to the corner of the porch today. In my little mind, I had it all figured out what was going to happen. So Junior went into the house to get the belt, and I'm standing there looking at Aunt Tanky. Aunt Tanky looking down at me like this. She didn't look mad, and she wasn't smiling, so I thought this was a good time for me to ask her, why? I wanted to know, why did she send Junior for the belt? Because in my mind, I thought this was a switching offense, not a belt offense. But she had sent him for the belt. And I didn't, but I said, Aunt Tanky, why did you send? And as far as I got, she said, "Didn't I tell you not to say anything to me, girl?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." So I decided that day not to press my luck. So I stood there, and she looked down at me. After a while, Junior came out the house. He had the belt. He knew he was going to get 3 licks with the belt, too, because she had sent him for it. Oh, and you should have seen his face. He was getting scared, and I was grinning. He's going to get it. And I'm going to the corner of the porch one more time. So I'm standing there. Junior came out. He walked over to Aunt Tanky. He said, he handed her the belt. Aunt Tanky looked at him. She said, keep it. Junior looked at her. He looked at me. He said, but she said, just hold on to the belt. She turned around and looked at me, and she said, give Loretta 3 licks. When I heard that, my eyeballs almost jumped out of my head because I couldn't believe what my ears were hearing. Aunt Tanky said, give me 3 licks. But he went, and then tears started to swell up in my eyes because I thought, that little woman done pulled a switcheroo on us. I remember I told you, never knew what that little woman was going to do until she stopped talking. She hadn't stopped talking. That little woman had told my brother to give me a spanking. That was never, ever supposed to happen. My brother wasn't supposed to spank me. So I looked at her, and by now tears are starting to flow, and I'm crying. She looked at me, and she just looked down. She said, go on, give Loretta 3 licks. I said, but why can't I give him 3 licks? And she just looked at me. She said, didn't I tell you not to say nothing to me? I said, well, why can't you give me 3 licks then? I couldn't believe my ears. She was going to let my brother give me a spanking. That was never supposed to happen. So Aunt Tanky looked at Junior again. He said, go on, give Loretta 3 licks. Junior looked at me, and I was crying there, and I'm standing there. I really wasn't scared. My feelings were hurt more than anything else because she was going to let my brother spank me. So I'm going like, and I was getting mad too. It's not supposed to happen like this. He never, ever supposed to hit me. It was never, ever supposed to happen. Why is she letting him spank me? Aunt Tanky gave Junior that look and said, give Loretta 3 licks. Junior said, yes, ma'am. And he gave me 3 taps on top of my clothes. He didn't hit me hard. But I stood there, and I cried like he was killing me. I screamed, and I hollered, and I danced. I really didn't feel the pain. I didn't feel anything. When he finished giving me the 3 licks, I cried and went on into the kitchen. I was going, ah! Ah! And I was washing the dishes, and I was still going, ah! Ah! Now, the kitchen sink was sitting close to the dining room door. So every once in a while, I would lean over and go, ah! I wanted them to hear how they had beat on me. So anyway, when I finished washing the dishes, I was still crying. Ah! Ah! So I went in my little and sat in my little rocking chair, and I sat there. Like I told you, he didn't hurt me. I didn't even feel it through my clothes. And I knew he wasn't going to hit me hard, but they didn't have to know that. So I just went on and did my thing. So anyway, when I finished, I sat in that rocking chair, and I cried for a long time. Well, after that incident, it took me a long time to forgive my brother for what he had done to me. I didn't, and I could look at him and tell, oh, he was so sad and so sorry. And the way I had cried, I know he thought he had really hurt me. But I didn't let him know that. And then after a while, I started thinking, and I finally forgave him. And I realized that I was wrong that day. If I had hit him with that piece of wood, I could have hurt him badly, or I could have put his eye out. And I just did, but I finally forgave him. But I stayed mad at him for a long time. But it took me almost a year before I got up enough nerve to go ask my grandmother why she let my brother spank me that day. And when she looked at me, she kind of smiled. She said, that day, your brother was wrong. He was wrong for stepping on your mud pies, but what you did was dangerous. You could have really hurt your brother seriously. You could have hit him. Suppose you had put his eye out. What were you going to do? And I looked at her. I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, besides that, I knew your brother wasn't going to hit you hard, but I also knew with him giving you that spanking, that was one spanking that you would never forget. And I wanted you to remember what you almost did. That's why I let him spank you that day. That day you needed to be taught a lesson, and that was the best one I could come up with. Now, I know you and your brother love each other, but I declare sometimes y'all just don't act like it. So I wanted you to remember that spanking so that you would not do that again. Well, all I got to say is it worked. After that day, I never picked up anything else to hit my brother. And she also put a fear in my cousin and my brother. Because after that day, they never threw anything at each other either. All three of us were scared because we didn't know what that little woman was going to do if that ever happened again. And I didn't know if that little woman was going to let my brother spank me again, so I made sure I didn't throw anything at him. And that's the end of that. Thank you.